Hello everyone, this is Rajesh Pichaimani and I am a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. This is going to be a two-part series on the topic of data migration to Amazon Web Services S3 using DataSync. This is the part one of the session and let's dive deep in. We'll start with the reference to the workshop that we will be covering in today's session, and there'll be a walkthrough of the first use case, migration from on-premises NFS server to S3, and finally conclude with the references. Today we will be using this workshop as a reference, scale out data migration to AWS storage using DataSync. There are multiple use cases here, and in this part one, we'll be focusing on the simplest one, which is migrating the data from on-premises to S3. If you are interested to try it out for yourself, this is the QR code listed in this top screen. So let's get this started. I'll switch to the console to walk through this process. I'm in the AWS console here. The first step highlighted in the workshop is to allow an inbound rule in the security group. There are two security groups that are created as a part of the CloudFormation template. For this workshop, we'll be focusing on the DataSync security group. In the inbound rule, by default, the CloudFormation must have created only the SSH entry. We will have to add HTTP entry from source anywhere. The workshop guides to use my IP, but for this demo purpose, I'm just using this anywhere IP. Okay. So the way to do it, edit inbound rules, add rule, HTTP, and my IP. Okay. And save the changes here. Since I have already done it, I'm going to cancel and come back out. Okay. This is the first prerequisite. And the reason for this edit is the browser should be able to connect to the DataSync agent via the port, HTTP port, to get the activation key and create the agent. And that's why we wanted to have this as a prerequisite step. Okay. The next one is this CloudFormation template. When you'll be setting up this workshop, creates 3 servers. 2 of them are DataSync agents, and one is the EC2 server, which acts as a NFS server. I have checked this to first get the public IP address here for the agent 1. And we will be using this information to create an agent. But before that, we will have to connect to the NFS server to just get a feel of what we are trying to achieve in this use case. This NFS server is connected to EC2 Instance Connect. This has 2 EBS volumes, and there are 2 folders inside the main directory as /data. Each of these folders have 252K files spread across 500 directory subfolders. Okay, and each one consists of around the files size is around 15 gig. So roughly 250K to 252K files. Okay, so this is a structure, and this is the data that we will be using DataSync to transfer to S3. Okay, now from here, if you say DataSync, it will take you to the page that should look something similar here. The first step is creating an agent and activating the agent. Now that we know there's 2 servers that are already available here, have the agent software installed, we need to get the activation key to connect to the DataSync service. To do that, create agent. There are various ways to deploy the agent. We have used EC2, and the agent address, public address, should be provided here. For example, copy the public address and paste in here and get the key. If you will be using the first time, the browser will reach to the agent to get the activation key and make it available to the service. I have already done this, so I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to show that this agent 1 is pointing to this datasync agent. Okay. And likewise, if you repeat the step for agent 2, this is the agent and this is online as well, which means that the datasync service is able to connect to the agent in this public IP address. Okay. The next comes the creation of the task as outlined in the workshop. There are two ways to do this. First is you can create locations, individual locations. Locations are endpoints, whether it is a source or a destination, whatever the case may be. And then you define a task which points to the location which is already created. In this scenario, in this workshop, we are going to use the creation of the task and specify the agent as a part of it, right? Location as a part of it. For example, creating the task, we can create the new location as a part of this configuration or choose an existing location if you have already done that. The way to say is the source location points to the NFS server. In this step, in this whole workshop scenario use case, we are going to try three different things. The first one is running a task in parallel, meaning if you go to the NFS server, the first scenario is we are going to point the folder 1 file to agent 1 and folder 2 file to agent 2. And these two tasks are triggered and started at the same time, that is running the tasks in parallel. We are going to observe some metrics in this first scenario. And in the second scenario, we are going to say that use folder 1 and folder 2, point this folder 1 and folder 2, and you will be pointing the main directory /data and using only one agent at a time, only one agent as a second scenario, and observe the results. And the third scenario is one task, which is pointing to the /data for two agents together. So these are the three scenarios. Right. So going back here, the first scenario, we will be pointing to, we'll be creating two tasks. The first one will be agent 1 and the second task would be agent 2. Say select agent 1. Here we will have to point out the NFS server, the private IP address. This is simulating the server that is available on premises in a customer location, right? We can say /data. Next. Here, the second step is destination. Obviously, the destination is going to be within AWS, and it's going to be S3 here. Browse. This is the primary bucket that was created as a part of the CloudFormation setup. Choose. In here, you can also specify additional subfolders to identify the tasks. Okay. Say test 1, etc. You can also specify the different storage class as a part of the migration. The IAM role can be auto-generated. and give a name. We can scan the entire data or specify a specific folder or an object. For example, we can say folder 1. This is including this. And don't forget to click the add pattern. Likewise, we can also specify the exclude option. There are various transfer options available. You can see only the data that's changed, all data. You can specify the bandwidth, permission settings, and logging information. And finally, in the step 4, we are reviewing all the steps, right? This is the source information telling I'm getting the data from the source on this NFS server. This is a NFS version. Here is a destination, the bucket, and then the folder path, and then the settings related to this whole task, and finally creating the task. I have already done this, so I'm going to cancel and show you what was created. So in the first scenario, we said tasks in parallel. So the first task is pointing to agent 1, and the second task is pointing to agent 2. After creation of these two tasks, so one thing to notice here also, you can also see the source information. This is NFS, the destination. For this scenario, I created a specified subfolder parallel task in the destination S3 bucket to identify and direct the data transfer for different scenarios. Okay, and naming this as parallel task. And the way once the task is created, we need to start the information, right? Start the task. So that's how the steps follows through. And once a task is initiated, you can go ahead and get the details from the task history section. These are the two information, one for task 1 and one for task 2. Some key information from here is what is the throughput. Roughly in this scenario, when we pointed the folder 1 to task 1, agent 1, and the second folder to agent 2, we were able to get the individual throughput of 2.1K files per second and aggregated throughput of 4K, right? Which means that by parallelism, you're increasing the throughput rate at which the data can be transferred for a total of 500K files, okay? And the time duration of it. So going back to the task for the second scenario, the task 1 with single agent means when we create a task, we only specify agent number 1 and say the entire data folder. So we are not using the second agent as listed here. So we are going to say only one agent will be responsible for transferring all the folders, folder 1 and folder 2 under the data directory, which is 500K files, through this agent, agent 1, and send it to S3 with the prefix task 1 with single agent. Okay. And when this task was run, the metrics was this. It took longer because it has to transfer a lot more files, and we are only using one agent. Okay. So the aggregated throughput is lesser than these combination of these, right? Only 2.8K files per second. And the status is success. Now, in the third scenario outlined in the workshop indicates we are using, again, both the folders, folder 1 and folder 2, coming from the data directory, and using two agents here. dual agent scenario, task 2 with dual agent. So if I click this, I can show the location, source location is pointing to 2 agents. The destination, again, I'm giving a path, task 2 with dual agent. Unlike the previous task, which only pointed to 1 agent, now we are using 2 agents to be responsible for the data transfer. Okay. And here is the summary. It took, again, close to 3 minutes. The throughput is very close to the previous scenario as well. Okay. When you will be going deep dive into the data sync, before it achieves that success status, there are different status phases the data sync task will go through. And you will be able to get those details from Cloud Shell, AWS CLI. How to get it? Click on this, get the task execution ID here. You can use AWS CLI if you're already installed in your laptop. I'm using Cloud Shell here. The command is AWS DataSync, describe task execution ARN, followed by the ARN name. Like, you can use this for all the ARNs that were created. I'm just using one of them for illustrating and to convey one key point here. We are telling, give me more details about this task. I want to draw your attention to the results information. As I mentioned, the data sync goes through various phases before it achieves the success state: launching, preparation, transfer, verification, and success, right? This is a section that indicates this. The prepare time is 8 milliseconds. 8 seconds, sorry. This is a number in milliseconds, so it's 8 seconds. And likewise for the transfer duration is 174 seconds. Verify duration is 1 second. Okay. So whatever you see on the console is a summation of all of them. If you will be troubleshooting any particular task to see where exactly the duration took a longer time, or if it is stuck in any state for troubleshooting purposes, any of the tasks, you can use this command as well. Okay. So those are the 3 different scenarios. This is for the first one, parallel task, 2 agents. The second scenario is 1 task with 1 agent. The third scenario is 1 task with 2 agents. And all of them executed with a success, as you're seeing here, with the metrics. Finally, we know the data is residing here. We have used the agents, and the agents are, and the history says success. Now we have to validate in the destination. This is a S3 bucket, the primary bucket. During the task creation, we have specified the prefixes to redirect the files to be stored, right, as a destination. So the first one is parallel task. Here it created the 2 folders as the original structure. The folder 1 contains 500 directories, and each one with 500 files. Okay. And likewise with folder 2, 500 subdirectories, and each one having 502 files. This is for the first case. The second case, task 1 with single agent, also the same structure, and task 2 with dual agent, the same structure. So this validates that the data has been successfully transferred to the destination location without any issues. Okay. So I want to take a few seconds to summarize the walkthrough. First is ensure that the security group is updated. If this entry is not created or forgotten, we will not be able to activate the agent as you are seeing here, because the laptop that you are accessing the browser to the agent does not have the permissions to access unless the security group is opened. Okay, that's the first step. And here is a preview of the 3 servers that were created. And we dove deep into the structure of the source data, created the tasks, ran the task like something like this. Once you click the task, you can say start with the defaults. Once a task has been started, then we can view this in the history. And finally, diving deep into one of the tasks using the task execution ARN. Finally, validating in the destination on the 3 scenarios. Okay. So these 3 scenarios form a part of the first use case, transferring the data from on-premises to S3. Going back to the slides, I want to wrap up with a set of references. The first one is a data migration workshop. This is a QR code if you're interested to dive deep into this data migration. For this use case and for the other ones listed, you can scan this QR code listed here. And the primary service that we have been working in this session is the DataSync. And this is a documentation. I want to thank you for your time for this joining me in this part 1 for the data migration use case. In the upcoming part 2, we will focus on the next scenario. I hope you like this, and we'll connect with you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.